quite quickly the ambulance or the paramedics arrived, and the first person was a lady who was asking me questions, and she started yelling at me to keep my eyes open, to stay awake, and to look in her eyes. And I felt so tired that I couldn't keep my eyes open. And all of a sudden, I shot through a tunnel.
When life throws a challenge at you, one thing is certain: to find a resolution for every issue, every problem, for everybody, there's more than one way. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the More Than One Way podcast. I'm Whitney Ross. With me, as always, is my good friend, Thom Rasnick.
Hey, Whitney.
Hey, Thom. How are you?
Good. I'm good.
Good. What's going on?
So we have a guest today, our friend Steve, who we were introduced to not too long ago. And Steve has an incredible story about a near-death experience.
Oh, wow.
And I think it not only was powerful for him, but it was powerful for us to hear.
Yeah.
So hope everybody enjoys it as much as we have. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Well, the story begins on a summer afternoon in Hampshire, southern England, in a city called Winchester, which is a beautiful ancient city. It was actually the capital of England before London. It has the most incredible cathedral that everyone should visit if they can. And basically I was in my early to mid 20s. I think I was 24 or 23, 24. I can't quite remember. I'll have to check. And my cousin's boyfriend asked me if I wanted to go mountain biking. Well, I'd recently purchased a bike and thought, great, yes, mountain biking, that sounds lovely, whatever that is. So I followed him, I met him, I drove with my bike to Winchester, I met him, and I just followed him on my bike, and I thought, well, we're out in the countryside near Winchester. It was a beautiful day, the sun was shining beautifully, and I followed him up a hill, or what I thought was a hill. And at times we had to really get off our bikes and push them because it was pretty steep. And I got to the top, and there was a little woodland, basically. I thought I'd gone up a hill and I was in a woodland, and he cycled off and I followed him. And I realised I was on an Iron Age hill fort, at the top of an Iron Age hill fort, and it's an exceptionally steep slope.
Oh, okay.
So I'd basically gone over the edge and could see what was ahead of me, which is a tremendous drop, basically. My bike picked up speed really quickly, and I knew I was in big trouble. I had a very strong feeling that this was not going to work out well. Anyway, before I knew it, I'd gone over the handlebars and a number of times, and landed much further down the Iron Age hill fort, and realised that I'd broken my left femur all the way through. Mm-hmm. I could see from just looking that it was completely broken. Well, some members of the public that were out walking around that area called an ambulance, and quite quickly the ambulance or the paramedics arrived, and the first person was a lady who was asking me questions, and I think she was just trying to keep me alert, trying to engage with me, and she started yelling at me to keep my eyes open, to stay awake, and to look in her eyes. And I felt so tired physically, I just felt so exhausted that I couldn't keep my eyes open. And all of a sudden, I shot through a tunnel, and I don't like to describe it as a dark tunnel because it has a negative connotation, I think, to use the word dark. But all I could see was this tremendous light at the end of this dark tunnel. And I was in that tunnel for a nanosecond. It was so quick. And it was like landing in a space of bliss, of light, of goodness. And my pets were there. I'd had a golden retriever as a boy and a couple of cats. And I was surrounded by people, by spirits. It wasn't a physical environment. I couldn't see my body. I couldn't feel my body. But I felt whole. I felt complete. I felt myself. And all I could feel within myself was love. It was as though every mistake I've made was just fixed, sorted out. If I've upset people or hurt people or made the wrong choices or said the wrong thing, it was all sorted out. And I just felt blissful, free, and I felt nothing but love for everyone and everything else. And I felt that from all of the people, all of the spirits that were around me. Imagine being born into a place where there's no judgment, there's no difference. You're just absolutely adored, as we say God adores us unconditionally. That's how I felt. And I always say to people, there aren't really words that can describe how wonderful it felt to be in that place. Mm-hmm. And I was asked quite quickly what I wanted to do. I remember the question that just was telepathic, was very clear, very simple. What do you want to do? And I knew that the question pertained to whether or not I should stay in this place. And I immediately thought, I would like to stay here, but my family would be devastated. Immediately, I opened my eyes, and the paramedic was beating my chest.
Oh, wow.
And she was yelling again, look at me, stay awake. And she started injecting me with pain medication, I presume. So it's quite a simple experience, but I feel, as I look at my life, I'm 49. I look at my experiences of life, of all the things that have occurred in my life to date, and this experience I had in my 20s, I would say is the greatest blessing, because it enables me to live life each day without any fear of what happens. We were chatting a little before we began the podcast, and I feel that we don't spend enough time in life on Earth talking about the bigger picture. And I think it's a great blessing to live life knowing that we don't need to be afraid of anything, really. If we don't die, then what do we really, really need to be afraid of? And I think for me, it made life far more meaningful, because I feel as though what I learn, what I experience, what I do, what I create is timeless. Because what you learn, what you become through your life and your spiritual education, etc., your own spiritual purification, it goes on forever. It's at your disposal forever. You can be of service in life.
Do you mind, Steve, if we go back to the place for a minute?
Yes.
So you said that it wasn't bodily, like you didn't have a body or you couldn't see. So what was the perception? Was pure feeling? Was that? I'm trying to get a sense of what the perception.
Just pure consciousness.
Okay.
Pure consciousness. I used to think as a little boy, I used to think to myself, well, I have this body, but is this what I am? My feelings are not physical. My knowledge is not physical. My thoughts are not physical. My character is not physical. And it really reaffirmed for me that we are consciousness, we are spirit, incarnated at this time in this incredible world of opportunity that requires us to... I think we require a physical body because we're in a physical place. But I felt as though I was pure consciousness, which is what I feel we are. You know, when you put your hands down and you just sit still and you go into meditation, you're just experiencing your consciousness really, in my opinion.
Yeah. Consciousness is a huge thing within the spiritual realm. And you know, some people would say consciousness comes from the brain, and then other people would say, no, consciousness is its own energy, and the brain is like the receiver station for it. And for me, what you seem to be saying is the latter, that the consciousness is a state of being. And in this incarnation that we're a part of, the brain is almost like the receiver station that helps us with the consciousness.
I would completely agree, because, again, the brain is physical. It's far more than we realize. I'm sure it's capable of far more than we realize and we discover as we go through time. But yeah, I believe that we are consciousness, and that consciousness it operates within and beyond the human body and the
beyond
human
the body
brain.
and the brain. Yeah. Within the context of your life, so you've had that experience, and then you come back. Do you see people kind of on a similar page to you with that, or is it hard, or more of the people you're with and come in contact with know we are a body that happens to think things?
I think there's a vast array of
yeah,
diversity.
Yeah.
You meet people that have a knowingness, and you meet people that believe life is meaningless. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity for us to discover much more. Yeah.
So, and within the people who you said just have a sense of knowing, in your life, in your experience, what is it what helps them with that sense of knowing, or is there something that helps them with that sense of knowing? Or what helps you? Maybe I should just put it that way.
Well, yeah, I think it's probably easier for me to answer it that way. I feel that a lot of it's about nature and God, spirit. I believe that it's so important for us to be connected to nature. And when we're divorced from nature, and for me, God is nature, nature is God, because I feel closer to God when I am in nature or in a sacred space. And cathedrals, churches, sacred places give us a higher connection to ourselves and to spirit. So for me, it's about being close to nature. It's taking the time to study, to research, to learn from other people about spirit and God, faith, religion. And again, for me, I feel closer to God when I'm in nature, when I'm gardening, when I'm with my animals, I'm with like-minded people, or in a sacred space. You feel connected to something much greater. And I feel that, you see, spirit and God and life, the universe, seems to come alive for me much more when I spend time in nature.
Yes. So nature for you then is more than just the matter that we see.
Absolutely. I believe and feel that everything is alive, that God is present in absolutely everything that he created, whether that's a blade of grass or a chipmunk, human being, a mushroom, a tree. God created everything.
Yeah. So when you say God created everything for you, does that mean like? No, I don't want to put you on the spot. So
no, you can. I love being.
If this is not, if this, then just go.
I'm happy to be put on the spot.
So the idea of God.
Yeah.
So, or the concept of God. So when we talk about God, in your mind, what is God? So God is nature, and nature is more than just the matter. So is God like? I don't want to like be. This is like a leading question. I feel really bad about this, but I'm gonna say it. So is God like the energy within and behind, and that we experience in life through nature and through one another?
I believe that God is imbued in absolutely everything. Again, so in us and in everything that God created, I feel that you can revere and see and experience God in a very special building made for that purpose, but equally a grove of trees and flowers. So I believe the interesting thing for me is when you ask that question about, well, if you consider, well, God is in everything, and God created everything, then you'll have to address the very difficult question of, well, why do bad things happen in the world? Mm-hmm. Why do bad things occur if God is in everything? And I can only give you my opinion based upon the limited experiences I've had, but my belief is God is present in everything, in every cell of our bodies. And in everything that he created, but we're free. We're free to experience. We're free to experiment. We're free to evolve. And that means that you have the free will to do things that you shouldn't do.
So would you say your thoughts around this, did they change after your experience versus kind of the way that you thought or envisioned God before your experience?
I think they really crystallized and affirmed my beliefs, proved my belief system to me. I wasn't raised in a religious family. Mm-hmm. I was christened. My parents are really good people. My grandparents are great people. I don't think they were especially church-going. It just wasn't the thing at that time, really, in parts of the UK. But good people, and I think that I'd really formed my belief system upon what I'd read. I was always a voracious reader, loved to read all kinds of things and just think for myself and spend time reflecting and time alone, again in nature, just thinking about things. And I believed absolutely that there was an afterlife. Just logically, it didn't seem possible to me that life could be meaningless, that it could just be the short chapter that ends and that's it, just gone like a... So I then had this experience in outside Winchester, and it sort of proved to me the core beliefs that I had, really. But again, it enabled me to live life knowing that there's a much bigger picture, that there's great meaning, great purpose, great opportunity. And I think it also helped me to be myself more, to not necessarily just pursue a purely material path. I'd always been really interested in studying and qualifications and my career. I'd started work at a young age, really, and even through university. So I was very, very ambitious and very excited about all the money to be made and all the things that I could acquire.
Sure. And
the experience made me realize, well, nothing I acquire other than my own growth, my spiritual growth and my experiences, nothing else will go with me to that place I went to. So should that be my focus? And I think that really helped me to mature a little faster when it came to the consideration of the material versus the spiritual in life, for sure.
So one of the things that you mentioned was some of the ways that you encounter the Spirit, encounter God. Are there other ways that help to kind of reinforce the experience that you had, since it's obviously a very, very powerful experience, and one that I could see just shaping the rest of your life. But is there a way to kind of almost like keep it alive within you? Not just the experience, but the spirit within the experience. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that
I'm glad you know what I'm saying, because I don't know what I'm saying. So I'm really
sounds
glad.
great. I think that a big part of it is looking after yourself. If I could feel so complete, or if we feel so complete when we're surrounded by spirit and goodness in a place that some we call heaven, or just whatever you wish to call it, doesn't matter so much to me. But I think that being yourself, because I've sort of thought to myself, well, if all of those people, all of those spirits, I say, that I felt surrounded by, loved me unconditionally, so that I could just love unconditionally myself. There was no risk, right?
Right.
It brought me, I had such a feeling of peace that I wanted to experience that as much as possible in life. And I realized that I needed to be myself, that I needed to look after myself, that I needed to respect myself and allow myself to pursue my greatest interests, etc. So a lot of it for me was about maybe treating myself a little the way I felt others experienced me when I was in spirit or in heaven, whatever you wish to call it. I think a lot of it boils down to self-love, because if you can love yourself and encourage yourself to be the best of yourself, then you have to do that with everyone else. And I think the world's a far more beautiful place when we do that.
Yeah, thank you.
So it sounds like your experience gave you a clearer picture of who you are, just in your own
I think it
essence.
and I think it gave me a much clearer of an understanding of how interconnected we are, of how we're all alike, how life and consciousness is not just about oneself, but about everyone and everything, including nature.
Yeah, it's kind of like the way I'm hearing you. If I can love myself, when I love myself, then the energy that I put out is that love, as opposed to me looking for love from somebody else, me trying to have somebody else complete me, as it were, or so it's if I can. And this goes back really to almost all spiritual traditions. Sometimes in the West, especially in the South, the West meaning Western. In the world, and especially in the South in the United States, we got into the idea that religion and all is supposed to be about other people. And that if you looked at yourself, it was unnecessary navel gazing and or selfish. And somehow or another, that to me, then that distorts everything else. Because then oftentimes what I find is I'm trying to have other people satisfy the needs that I can satisfy for myself. And so what I hear you saying from the experience, it reinforces those spiritual truths, that is, love yourself first. And within that, that's not selfish, because it'll come out. It'll come through you. And when you love yourself, since we are interconnected, we are loving one another all at the same time.
Yeah, and I think if you love yourself and you're at peace in yourself, and you know that you're that we are all interconnected, that there is a God, there is an afterlife, that there is great meaning in everything, you're far kinder to other people. If we're happy in ourselves, then we're generally nicer to others, kinder to others.
Yeah, what do you say to people sometimes? Because I've meet a lot of people who, for whatever reason, can be nice to other people and be kind to them and cut them slack, but when it comes to themselves, they can't do any of that. You know what I mean? Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, I've struggled with that myself a lot in the past, to be honest with you. Where does the line or the balance lie between taking care of yourself whilst being of service or helping others.
Yeah.
Because you can fall into just being completely consumed by other people's needs and neglecting your own, and that doesn't work out at all. So I think it's about that balance. But I think also that we're unique. And the big question for me was, well, how can I be of greatest use in the world? Now, that might be running around like a headless chicken, delivering groceries to people that are busy, or it might be, donating time to a charity. It might be helping animals, whatever it may be. Yeah, I think it's important to consider God's work. What is my purpose in the world? What can I do, or what can you do that nobody else can do better, or the way you do it? Because there's something that each person can do, a role that each person can play better than anybody else.
Yeah.
And I think that we forget that. We forget to embrace our individuality and our strengths and differences, whilst remembering that at the core we're all one.
Yeah. Yeah, holding both of those things at the same time, that we're unique and unique unto ourselves, but at the same time interconnected with other people. So we don't live, never are we really in isolation. That's what I hear you saying. And that's certainly my experience as well. It's the idea that, I think you said this toward the beginning, but the more I can know myself, the more service I can give to the world.
Yeah.
The more I take care of myself, the more service I can give to the world. And it's both of those things always.
Yeah, and I believe that the more we seek harmony and balance, the more we seek to be our best, the more we seek to understand ourselves, the more we open the door to God and to Spirit. It's like leaving the light on, saying, I'm awake, I'm available.
Awake and available. It's hard to do that if you're a chicken with your head cut off. But I hear what you're saying, no doubt about it. I mean, even a chicken with its head cut off is important, right?
It is, but it's equally important that we seek harmony, because to be our best for other people, to do our best work in the world, we have to have balance. We have to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I feel as though balance, harmony is the important point, because again, we become imbalanced if we're completely reclusive. We become imbalanced if we're running around pleasing everybody or helping everybody without taking the time we need to be connected.
That's not really love.
Healthy.
That's not really love when I'm doing that. When I'm running around just trying to please everybody, that's not love. That's something else. Not quite sure what it is. Because it's just, once again, it is so important to recognize, for me it is anyway, and I'm getting a lot of this just from the chat we're having, that each of us is unique, and so what that balance looks like is going to be different for each of us too. There's not like one big point. There's not like this is balance and we all are that. No, everybody's going to have what balance looks like. Somebody like me is going to need way more time alone than maybe somebody else, but I have to recognize that and do it in order to then be of service. And so to try to pretend like I'm somebody else just destroys that, gets in the way. It messes everything up.
And I think it even boils down, and it's very present in our culture. And if you think of the North American culture, or the United States particularly, it's very much about being busy and achieving and doing as much as possible, and go.
Yeah.
And as you correctly pointed out, that's just what some people need.
Yeah.
But some people become discordant or unhealthy when they haven't got enough activity.
Right.
But we are each different, and again, we need balance.
Yeah.
And I honestly have found that when I've slowed down, allowed myself to be myself, and taken the time to reflect and do things the way I choose to do them, that's when I do my best work. And we have this sort of assumption, this because of our culture, that for something really wonderful to occur or for you to have your greatest achievement, you need to be running around like a headless chicken. And I don't buy that at all.
Yeah. It's frightening, those headless chickens. They scare me to death.
One thing we didn't talk about as well was, when we met, you said, well, what about hell?
Oh, yeah.
And I think my answer was the same as it is now, which is that you go where you resonate. If you want to be an awful person and do lots of damage in the world, then you will, you won't necessarily land in the most blissful spot after this life. And so sometimes people think, well, if you don't die, it doesn't really matter what you do. Do a load of damage, doesn't matter, we don't die. But I guess the point I'm making is that we want to be better. We want to be worthy of that place we go to. And we want to be the best when we can get there. And we can bring it here or reverse engineer it here. But I do believe that if someone wants to be a terrible person and do terrible things, then there's a price to be paid for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the way that what that makes me think of is talking about if we're beyond our body and that we're consciousness incarnated, for lack of a better way to say it right now, then consciousness to me oftentimes is experienced on vibrational levels, right? So it's so if we're going to live at that low vibrational place, it's almost impossible to get to the higher level right away.
I think we attract what we are.
Yeah, and so then that way you just got to keep moving. And part of that, and I hear what part of keeping yourself out of hell, for me, the way I hear it on this side of the pond, as it were, is to start with self-love. That if I can start there with true self-love, that somehow or another that will help my vibrational energy to increase, and that'll also help me to move from this hell realms that are that can come from not liking ourselves, not caring about ourselves. So anyway, that's what it makes me think about, and that could then carry over into the afterlife. But for me, to me, as on this side in particular, I'm just going to imagine on the other side, there's always room for growth.
Though I've got no doubt about that. I don't think the journey of growth and spiritual purification ends until we're so wonderful that we just merge back into the Godhead.
Yeah, it's like pure light. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you made a really good point as well about loving oneself, in the sense that if we are interconnected, if we are all one, I have to love myself to love you.
Yeah.
I have to love you to love myself. So if I'm not loving myself, then I'm not loving you.
Yeah.
If I'm not loving you, then I'm not loving myself, because we're part of one thing. And you mentioned the point about feeling whole, or finding the other half. And I often think that if I want to be, if people take the example of relationships, people say, "Oh, I think this person's my other half," and I always say, "Well, you're better off being a whole orange than half an orange." Then when you find the right match, who's also a whole orange, you're a pair of happy whole oranges, rather than two broken halves that are presuming that the combination's going to fix everything when it won't.
Yeah.
So in thinking about that whole concept of self-love and loving others, if for whatever reason you're not feeling loved by others, how do you find a way to love yourself if you're kind of in that that in between or in that absence for whatever reason in a season in life?
My answer is think of someone else that you just adore, or something else that you adore unconditionally. So if you have children, think of that first time you held your child and you saw that purity, that innocence, that bliss, and you felt an unconditional love, an unwavering love, and see yourself that same way, treat yourself that same way. I believe that's how God would treat us and does treat us, and that's how we should treat each other. It's also how we should treat ourselves. So you think of a person that doesn't have a child. Well, I don't have children, but I have a beautiful chocolate Labrador called Jimbo, and I bought him in a garden centre in France. I was sent to buy a bunch of flowers, and I came home with a chocolate Labrador puppy and put him on the dining table and said, here's the flower arrangement. The table wasn't set at that point. And I remember when I looked in my puppy's eyes, and every time I look in my puppy's eyes, I see how much he adores me unconditionally. Mm-hmm. And I feel the same for him. Mm-hmm. And I always smile and say, well, dog is God reversed. And I think that you can experience the purity, the completeness of God's love and God's essence in an animal you love, in a child that you love, just as you can choose to do it for yourself.
It's a beautiful picture.
Well, imagine the world if we could all see each other that way.
Oh my goodness.
Can you imagine how incredible this planet, this solar system, this place could be if we all just got our act together, if everybody just made a choice? We really could create heaven on earth. And we have heaven on earth. The only thing getting in the way is the decisions we make.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. And I think for some people, it just takes lots and lots of practice. So based on how you were raised, the amount of love you experience at that point in time and not. Mm-hmm. And nobody's perfect, so sometimes it doesn't always come across. So for some of us, it might take longer to really buy that yes, this is how I should treat myself, with adoration and kindness and love.
I agree. And also, if we live forever, then we've got a very, very long time to become all of the things that we want to be. We've got a very long time to become perfect. We don't need to do it today. If we can, great, and we should seek to. But we've got as long as we need. And if I was terrible last week, have the opportunity to be better this week. Yeah. And it's okay to step backwards. It's okay to miss a meeting. It's okay to fail. And we have forever.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't beat ourselves up for being who we are at this point, or for retrograding tomorrow. It's okay.
Yeah, one of the hardest things and best things, I think, once again, about self-love that comes from, to me, most of the great spiritual traditions, is what needs to be loved as well as the things you don't like about yourself. That needs probably more love than the things that you think, hey, I'm pretty... Loving that somehow or another is a way to shift it.
I agree completely. And I often think when I look at myself, I see the errors in my ways as opportunities.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Once again, you get to practice loving things you don't like.
Yeah.
Except for UT basketball. They better win tonight. If they don't win tonight, I don't love them anymore.
I think also of a baby that's screaming at night, you still adore your child. Sure. Mm-hmm. When your dog or your puppy has an accident on your favourite slippers, it doesn't change the way you love your child. and we're okay to make mistakes as well.
Yeah,
That's great.
absolutely. Steve, thank you so much for being with us, and we really appreciate you sharing your experience. And I think even though we may not all encounter that same experience, we can feel connected just in hearing each other's stories and sharing that, and sharing where we find that bliss in life and where we feel that connection with others. And I think the more we can share that, the more we can really find those places of hope and connection, and really alleviate some of those fears and uncertainty that might sometimes shape our actions or even our love of ourselves. So thank you so much for sharing what you went through. And we always appreciate you listening. And if you have an experience that you'd like to share, we'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the More Than One Way podcast, brought to you by the Center for Spiritual Practice in Knoxville, Tennessee. We really appreciate your time and would love to hear your feedback. You can reach us by emailing hello@morethanonewaypod.com, or you can connect with us on social media using the handle @morethanonewaypod. If you found this episode helpful, we hope that you'll share it with your friends, with your family, with people you work with all the people who you know. Thank you, and take care.